So most justices of the Supreme Court are relatively not recognized by the public, I would say. Maybe in recent years that's changed a little bit, but you are extremely well known around the country now. But you weren't when you went on the court, but now you've become more or less a rock star, R.B.G, and you have movies about you on the basis of sex and other things. So why do you think this has occurred, and is this something you don't really enjoy that much, or is something you just think comes with the territory now?
How was the Notorious R.B.G created? It was the idea of a second-year student at NYU Law School who was very disappointed in the court's decision in the Shelby County case. And that was a case in which the court declared unconstitutional the key provision of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, an act that had been renewed time and again by overwhelming majorities, both sides of the aisle. But the Supreme Court struck down the formula. The way the Voting Act worked was if you were a state or a city or a county that kept African Americans from voting in the not so good old days, you could not make any change in voting legislation unless you pre-cleared it with the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, or with a 3-judge district court in the District of Columbia. So that advance check suppressed many laws that would have discouraged African Americans from voting. The Supreme Court said, well, the formula for who was discriminating in 1965 is now out of date. Congress needs to do it over because jurisdictions that were discriminating in 1965 may have clean hands today. The political problem was what member of Congress, what senator, what representative would stand up and say, my state or my city or my county is still discriminating, so keep it under the surveillance that the Voting Rights Act provides. It just wasn't going to happen. The act itself had a bailout provision. So if a state, city, county indeed had clean hands for several elections, it could bail out. And that device, I thought, was all that was needed. But in any event, the student was disturbed about the court's decision. She was angry. And then she said to herself, anger is not a useful emotion. I'm going to do something positive. And what she did was she took the announcement of my dissent that I read from the bench in Shelby County, and she created this blog, heading it the Notorious R.B.G, a name she got from a well-known rapper who was called the Notorious B.I.G. And when I was asked, well, what in the world do you have in common with the Notorious B.I.G? I said, it's obvious. Both of us were born and bred in Brooklyn, New York.
So, now, you were born and bred in Brooklyn. You have still a bit of a Brooklyn accent, you might admit. You were played in a movie by Felicity Jones, who was not Jewish or from Brooklyn. So how do you think she did?
I thought she was fantastic. When I first met Felicity, I said, you speak the Queen's English. How are you going to sound like a girl born and bred in Brooklyn? But she listened to many tapes of my speeches, my arguments at the court, and she was wonderful.